What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. Today, I'll be taking a look at the entries for the 2024 The Loop 110 at the Chicago Street Course. Let's go ahead and just jump straight into it. We're going to start talking about the Double Zero car for Stewart-Haas Racing. This one once again be driven by Cole Custer. Cole Custer comes into this year's Chicago Street Course race as a defending winner after the race got called early. He'll be looking to get his first win of the 2024 season at Chicago and looks to get his second straight Chicago Street Course win. He looks to get it done with SHR as he also looks to move up the Cup in 2025. Up next, how about the one car for Junior Motorsports? This one once again be driven by Sam Mayer. Sam Mayer's had a pretty solid year in 2024 with 2 victories, those coming at Texas and Iowa Speedway. But he's also a really strong road course racer. I think Sam Mayer is going to have a very solid and good performance this weekend at Chicago, and I think he'll be a threat and contender to get win number 3 of 2024 this weekend at the Chicago Street Course. Up next, how about the 2 car for Richard Childress Racing? This one once again be driven by Jesse Love. Jesse Love has had a very impressive rookie year honor performance so far. He's had a lot of top 5s, a lot of top 10s, and a win coming earlier this year at Talladega. I think Jesse's going to contend for a top 10 this weekend. There's a lot of Cup guys in the field, a very stacked field this weekend. I think Jesse Love will have a pretty good run, though, this weekend. Up next, how about the 4 car for JD Motorsports? This weekend, it'll be driven by Ty Dillon, who I believe will make his 2nd or 3rd Xfinity start of the year. Ty Dillon is overall a pretty decent road course racer, so I think he'll have a chance and opportunity for maybe a top 25 or 30 if he can make the show, because this field, like I said already, is extremely stacked. Ty Dillon, though, looks to get this car in the field for sure this weekend at the Chicago Street Course with JD Motorsports. Up next, how about the 5 car for our Motorsports? This one once again be driven by Anthony Alfredo. Anthony Alfredo has had a pretty good year, all things considered so far. He's had some top 10s, I think a couple top 5s throughout the season, and also won the Dasher Cash honors earlier this year at Dover. He's looking for a pretty good run this weekend. I think he's done a pretty solid and great job. I think he's done good. He'll be looking once again, though, for a fantastic run this weekend with this team at Chicago. Up next, how about the 6 car for JD Motorsports? This will once again be driven by Thomas Anuizieta, who will make his 2nd career Xfinity Series start this weekend. Thomas is a pretty good racer in the Trans Am scene, so I think he's actually going to have a really strong run this weekend at Chicago. I don't think he's going to be a contender for the win, but if he's able to make a show with the speed he's shown, I think he'll do a pretty good job. I think he'll have a good performance, and I think he could be a surprise underdog to get a great run at the Chicago Street Course. Up next, how about the 7 car for Junior Motorsports? This will once again be driven by Justin Allgaier. Justin Allgaier has had a fantastic year for his standards in 2024 with 1 victory, but has had some consistency. And he's also one of the better road racers in Xfinity as well. I do think Justin Allgaier will have a good chance and opportunity. He is looking for his 2nd win of 2024. I think he'll have a great chance and opportunity to do that with Junior Motorsports this weekend at the Chicago Street Course. Up next, how about the 07 car for SS Greenlight Racing? This will once again be driven by Alex Abey, who I believe will be making his 2nd or 3rd Xfinity Series start of the year. Alex Abey is a really solid and pretty awesome road course racer, and I think Alex will have a good chance to make the show. If he's able to make the show, I think he'll have a chance for a top 10 or top 15. He's got some of the street course experience from racing, of course, in the Penny Series. He looks for a great run, and I think he's got a good chance to do that this weekend for sure. Up next, how about the A car for Junior Motorsports? This will once again be driven by Sammy Smith. Sammy Smith has been very inconsistent throughout 2024. When he joined Junior Motorsports, I did expect a lot better. He's had some good runs for sure, there's no denying that, but generally it's not been a great year for the driver of the A team. Is basically on the cutoff line going in this weekend. He's looking for a great run. He's a decent road racer, however, so I think he could have a good run at Chicago. Up next, how about the 9 car for Junior Motorsports? This will once again be driven by Brandon Jones. This has been a very frustrating year for Brandon Jones in 2024. He's not had a lot of fantastic runs, unfortunately. I expected more. It just hasn't worked out for him. I think he needs to really turn the corner quickly because Connor Zilisch is in the running for the seat going into the next year. He needs to turn it around. We'll see what Brandon Jones can do at Chicago. Up next up, the 11 car for Kaulig Racing. This will once again be driven by Josh Williams. Josh Williams has also been pretty disappointing throughout 2024. When he joined his team, I wasn't expecting to be a contender for the championship, but I expected to be a playoff threat, and really outside of a couple good runs, it has not been a good season for Josh Williams. He's really looking to turn the corner and turn it around this weekend. He's not been a great road racer, but he'll get some help from SVG this weekend at Chicago. Up next up with the 14 car for SS Greenlight Racing. This will be driven by Andrew Castro, who I believe will make his second or third Xfinity start of the year. Andre Castro comes from the NASCAR Euro Series. He's actually ran quite well here last year with Jesse Iwuji Motorsports. I think that team's helping the organization this weekend. I think that he's going to have a solid chance and opportunity. This is a great opportunity for Andre as he looks to have a great and solid run this weekend at the Chicago Street Course with the 14 team. Up next, how about the 15 car for AM Racing? There's a driver change for this car this weekend. It was announced earlier this evening that Joey Logano will be making his first Xfinity Series start since 2019, replacing Hailie Deegan, who will not be behind the wheel. It is unknown at this point if she'll be back with AM Racing this year. There is a chance she could be back later this year, but we haven't had official confirmation on that. The reason to bring Joey Logano in is because this car is not in a good position to owner's points, which means, like I said, Hailie Deegan is out of the ride currently at the moment, and she may not be back anymore with this team and organization. Up next, how about the 16 car for Kaulig Racing? This will once again be driven by AJ Allmendinger. We know AJ Allmendinger is a fantastic and great road course racer. He'll be looking for a great run this week and still looking for that first win of the year, which is really surprising or shocking up to this point. Luckily, he's a fantastic and good road racer. I think he will have a pretty good chance and a strong opportunity, at least, for a great run this weekend at the Chicago Street Course with this team and organization. Up next, how about the 17 car for Hendrick Motorsports? This will once again be driven by Kyle Larson, who will make his second and final start in Xfinity this year. Kyle Larson is a great road course racer. We know he's going to be a contender in the Cup Series race, and we expect him to be a contender in the Xfinity race as well. He's one of the favorites going into the weekend, and certainly I think he's going to have a great chance and opportunity to get it done. This car is in a pretty good position. Owner's points, I expect Larson to easily make it and be a threat for the win and victory. Up next, how about the 18 car for Joe Gibbs Racing? This will once again be driven by Sheldon Creed. Sheldon Creed has either ran up front or had issues on his car. And I think he's still looking for that first win of the year. And I hope it can happen. But I'm not really expecting it. The 18 cars had a lot of mechanical issues. And I do think there's going to be some pretty big mechanical issues for drivers throughout the weekend. We'll see what Sheldon can do. But I don't expect him to be a major threat or contender for the win this weekend. Up next, how about the 19 car for Joe Gibbs Racing? This will once again be driven by Ty Gibbs, who makes his third or fourth Xfinity Series start of the season. Ty Gibbs is looking for still his first Xfinity win of 2024, but we know Ty Gibbs will probably be a contender and threat for the win. He was pretty good at Sonoma before all the debacle happened near the end of the race. I expect Ty Gibbs to be up front. I think he will be a pretty big threat, and I think he will for sure be a contender this weekend at Chicago with Joe Gibbs Racing and the 19 organization. Up next, how about the 20 car for Joe Gibbs Racing? This will once again be driven by John Hunter Nemechek. John Hunter is coming off winning last week's race at National Super Speedway and looks to go back-to-back and get what would be his 10th career Xfinity Series win. John Hunter is a solid road racer, but not a fantastic road course racer. He looks to have a great and fantastic run with JGR in the 20 team this weekend at Chicago Street Course and looks to get a second win in a row. Up next, out with the 21 car for Richard Childress Racing. This will once again be driven by Austin Hill, who will be doing double duty as a Run the Cup Series race as well. Austin Hill, I think, is pretty good in the Xfinity Series, and I do expect that he will be an underdog for the win overall. Though there's a lot of Cup guys in the field, I certainly think Austin Hill will have a pretty strong and great run. He'll look to get it done and get that third victory and first win since Atlanta earlier this year in season. Up next, how about the 26 car for Sam Hunt Racing? This will once again be driven by Sage Karam, who will make his third Xfinity start of the season or fourth Xfinity start of the year. Sage Karam is a pretty good road course racer. I think he will be a contender and threat for a top 10 at least with a very stacked field. He looks for a fantastic, a very solid, and a very strong and great run this weekend at Chicago Street Course with the Sam Hunt Racing team and organization. Up next, how about the 27 car for Jordan Anderson Racing? This will once again be driven by Jeb Burton. Jeb Burton has been very inconsistent this year, and this year has really not gone well for the 27 team, and I really unfortunately don't expect much to change this weekend, sadly. I think Jeb is a very talented driver, but things have not been going well for him. He's looking to turn it around, but sadly, I'm really not expecting much from the 27 team and Jeb Burton this weekend at the Chicago Street Course. Up next, up with the 28 car for RSS Racing. This one's going to be driven by Kyle Sieg. Kyle Sieg has been very inconsistent throughout 2024, but he's also had a couple of standout and good performances. He's looking for a good run this weekend, but with the lack of speed RSS has shown on the road courses, I'm not expecting much for him this weekend with the 28 organization. Up next, up with the 29 car for RSS Racing. This one's going to be driven by Blaine Perkins. Blaine Perkins has not had a great year. He is now the last driver in full season points that is basically going for every single race at this point. I really don't expect much from Blaine Perkins this weekend. I sadly think he will not run good and will struggle at the Chicago Street Course. Up next, out with the 31 car for Jordan Anderson Racing. This one's going to be driven by Parker Retzlaff. Parker Retzlaff's had some very solid and good runs this year, but has also had some not so good runs. And I do think he could have a pretty strong run with the Jordan Anderson Racing team this weekend. He's looking for a bounce back run after some inconsistencies recently. He looks for a great and strong run this weekend at the Chicago Street Course with JAR. Up next, up with the 32 car for Jordan Anderson Racing. This one's going to be driven by Austin Green, who will make his fourth career Xfinity Series start this weekend. Austin Green is a really good road course racer. He has currently had, in 3 starts, 2 top 10 finishes, and even a top 5, I believe, as well. I think Austin Green is going to have a chance and opportunity for a top 10 at least this weekend. I think the pacer speed is going to be there, and I think he'll do excellent and great job this weekend at the Chicago Street Course. Up next, up with the 35 car for Joey Gase Motorsports. This will be driven by Brad Perez, who I believe will make his first Xfinity start with this team this season. Brad been working really hard to make an opportunity and a name for himself and has done the best he can to make the best of the opportunities he has. He will have to qualify his way in, but if anyone can get the best out of it, it is definitely Brad, the Breadman Perez. He looks for a very good and very strong run this weekend at Chicago. Up next, up with the 36 car for DGM Racing. This will be driven by Daniel Suarez, who will make his second Xfinity Series appearance of the year. Daniel Suarez is looking to get some experience, and it's cool to see that he's kind of going the Ross Chastain road and driving in a kind of underfunded ride. We know Suarez can run up front at road courses. He can be a challenger. This is going to be good for the owner's points. I think Suarez will contend at least for a top 10 this weekend at Chicago. Up next, up with the 38 car for Viking Motorsports. This one's going to be driven by Matt DiBenedetto. Matt DiBenedetto has been pretty good at road courses in his racing career. And I think if Matt DiBenedetto can easily make the show, I think we'll have a good chance for top 15. This team is in a pretty solid position, owner's points of how well Matt's been doing, but they've also been very inconsistent. Luckily, they've got some good owner's points. They look to have a good and strong run this weekend with Viking at the Chicago Street Course. Up next, up with the 39 car for RSS Racing. This one's going to be driven by Ryan Sieg. Ryan Sieg's had some really strong performances this year in 2024, but there's also been some unfortunate races for this number 39 team. He's looking for a very strong run this week, and I don't expect much of how competitive the field is going to be. I think he sadly will struggle, and unfortunately, I don't think he runs well this weekend at the Chicago Street Course with the 39 team. Up next, up with the 42 car for Young's Motorsports. This one's going to be driven by Leland Honeyman Jr. Leland has had some very standout runs this season, but also has had some not-so-great performances. He is looking for a great run this weekend at Chicago Street Course with the 42 team and organization. We'll see if he can have the pace and speed to make the show, but he does have some good and decent owner's points going into the weekend. Up next, up with the 43 car for Alpha Prime Racing. This one's going to be driven by Ryan Ellis. Now, he's got some cool sponsorship from Snapchat this weekend, and Ryan's had some pretty good runs, but also this car is kind of a little bit more in a danger zone than we originally thought with how competitive the field is going to be. He's looking for a good run this weekend. Hopefully, he won't have any issues and can make the field this weekend at the Chicago Street Course with the 43 team. Up next, up with the 44 car for Alpha Prime Racing. This one's going to be driven by Brennan Poole. Brennan Poole has been so impressive this year. in like the 16 or 17 races that we've ran, I think he's only finished outside the top 20 or top 25 in like 2 or 3 or 4 races. They've generally been doing good. They're around the top 20 points. I think he's 16th in the points right now, which is super impressive. If he actually got a chance and opportunity to make the playoffs this year, he'll be looking, though, for a good run this weekend at Chicago. Up next, how about the 45 car for Alpha Prime Racing? This will be driven by Alan Day, who I believe will be making his first Xfinity Series start since he drove the Zombie Dodge back in 2016. Alan has had a lot of street course experience. It's amazing to see him come back. You never know when drivers are going to get the chance and opportunity again. He's looking for a good run at Chicago. He's looking to get this car into the race. I think Alan will do a pretty good and strong job with the team this weekend. Up next, how about the 48 car for Big Machine Racing? This one once going to be driven by Parker Kligerman. Parker Kligerman has had a very solid but also a pretty quiet year with the Big Machine Racing organization. I do think that Parker Kligerman will have a chance to get a top 10 and maybe even a top 5 as well, and maybe could seal the win in victory. He's looking for a great run this weekend and looking to help continue to build the Big Machine Racing group going into next year, as I do think he'll be back with Big Machine Racing more than likely in 2025. Up next, how about the 50 car for Pardis Racing? This, of course, will be driven by Preston Pardis. Preston Pardis has had very difficult times getting into this race, and it's such a shame because he's a really good road racer in my opinion. I've seen what he can do with the 92 car. He's actually qualified this and ran in practice up front a lot of times. I do think that Preston Pardis will have a pretty solid run if he can make the show. If not, it is what it is at this point. I think he's in the danger zone, unfortunately. He looks to have a great and strong run and make the show for sure this weekend at the Chicago Street Course. Up next, how about the 51 car for Jeremy Clements Racing? This one's going to be driven, of course, by Jeremy Clements. Jeremy Clements has not had a great year this year, unfortunately. He's had a couple good qualifying runs and performances, but outside of that, the performances on the track have just not looked good for the 51 team. He's looking for a great run this weekend, a turnaround to see if he can do good because he is a pretty good road racer. Up next, how about the 53 car for Joey Gase Motorsports? That's right, they are going to be entering 2 cars this weekend, it sounds like, and it's TBA. I think they're going to run pretty good, whoever it is. I think maybe they get Frankie Mina somehow, who knows at this point. Frankie, I know, probably wants to run Xfinity again, though he did struggle with this team. They're looking for a good run, and they're looking to make the show this weekend at Chicago Street Course with the 53 team. Up next, how about the 81 car for Joe Gibbs Racing? This one's going to be driven by Chandler Smith. Chandler Smith has had a lot of great runs this year and is a championship threatening contender, but unfortunately road courses have generally not been his specialty. That's why we look at him to be a threat at ovals every time, because he isn't the greatest at road courses. He is looking for a great and fantastic run and looks to be a contender for his 3rd win of 2024 and his first win since all the way back at Richmond in April. Up next, how about the 88 car for Junior Motorsports? This will be driven by Connor Mosack, who will make his first of 2 scheduled starts with this team in 2024. Now, if this was an oval, I would complain, but this is a road course, so I can't really complain because Connor is a pretty solid road course racer. We know Connor Zilisch will be potentially in contention for the seat to run later this season, so Connor needs to make the best of his opportunity. He looks for a fantastic, great run. We know Chase Elliott could also be a contender. Dale Jr. is going to run in the seat at some point, but we do know that Connor Mosack will be looking to run really good with the 88 team this weekend at the Chicago Street Course. Up next, how about the 91 car for DGM Racing? This one once going to be driven by Kyle Weatherman. Kyle Weatherman, in my opinion, pretty underrated driver overall. Not probably the greatest road course racer, though, sadly and unfortunately. We do know DGM's been good on those types of tracks, so having drivers, of course, like Preston Pardis help them over the years and Josh Bilicki be there for this weekend is really going to help. He looks for a very solid and strong run this weekend at the Chicago Street Course. Up next, how about the 92 car for DGM Racing? This will once again be driven by Josh Bilicki, who will make his 3rd or 4th appearance with this team and organization. Josh, like I mentioned in the video earlier today, pretty awesome road racer. Runs up front when he does get behind the wheel of a solid car. If it's not a great car, he can absolutely motor it and get the best out of it. I think Josh Bilicki will have a pretty solid and strong performance if he can make the field easily. He looks to get it done. We're going to see what he has the opportunity to do, but he does look to have a good run this weekend at the Chicago Street Course with DGM. Up next, how about the 97 car for Kaulig Racing? This one once going to be driven by Shane Van Gisbergen. Shane Van Gisbergen is the absolute favorite going into this weekend. He's a defending winner of the NASCAR Cup Series race at this track, and SVG, of course, has won the last 2 straight road course races and probably should have 3 in a row if you count Kona. He will absolutely be the guy to watch for this weekend. I think he's going to have a very excellent, a really strong, great opportunity. Don't be surprised if SVG is easily able to sweep the weekend, not just win Cup, but Xfinity, and get his 3rd career Xfinity Series win this weekend at the Chicago Street Course. And finally, let's talk about the 98 car for Stewart-Haas Racing. This, of course, once going to be driven by Riley Herbst. Riley Herbst is looking for a job going into the 2025 season because we know he's likely not going to Haas factory, and we don't know where he's headed at this point. He needs to kind of take that off his mind right now as he looks to focus on trying to make the field pretty easily, which he's going to be easily able to do. He's looking for his first win in 2024. A win would really go a long way for next year. He's looking for a fantastic and a really strong, great run for sure this weekend at the Chicago Street Course with SHR. So that is the official entry list for the 2024 The Loop 110. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, notifications on, so if I win a video, does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and support our Patreon as well. Let's go below that and comment your thoughts below on today's video. What are your thoughts about the entry list? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Tomorrow on the channel, we're going to have a NASCAR news video discussing news over the course of the last couple of days. We're going to talk about Hailie Deegan and a couple other drivers as well. We're also going to have the Xfinity Series race picks video dropping as well. If anything major breaks throughout the rest of the week, we'll discuss it here live on the channel. So anyways, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's episode, and I'll see you guys next time for more great, awesome NASCAR content and other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.